tag on to a piece of what Barb talked about a little bit. I think a lot of the kids out there, who haven't been able to see their mom and dad, or dad, think about prison as what they see on TV. And as a result, the anxiety, that's all they know. That's why the 8-year-old is waking up at night, because that's all they know. Something the kids can get out of this is a better perspective not to be worrying about what's happened to mom. And that there's some comfort in that, and the assurance, reassurance, in seeing mom face to face, talking with mom or dad, and realizing that they're not in danger, if that's the case, to help set that child's mind at ease. Another interesting piece in our project, we've got 3 of our moms who have teenage daughters who just became moms. And at least one of those, as a result of a 18-year-old pregnancy, she reached out and got in contact with her mom. And she's going through that whole piece and she has no driver. She lives in Missouri, has no driver's license, no transportation. One of those situations where the dad was one of those, brief relationship kind of things, and came back when he found out she was pregnant. So that's the relationship she's in, has no job. And mom is all she has to help understand what's going on in her world through the pregnancy and having a baby and things of that nature. So the generational issue is a big piece, and at least for some of the kids, the connection with mom, for 3 of ours, has been a piece in helping them get through a pregnancy and having a new baby. So
the only thing I wanted to say in addition to what she was saying is that in February, one of the mothers in the program was released, and last year we did a program that was 4 hours, kind of a special program called Uniquely Mim, where the mothers got to do some things with their daughters. They did a journal and they did some craft, and I still had those items. This mother who got out in February, but I attended her funeral in June, so she was out 4 months with the. I found these items, so I took them to the little girl's house, and she said, "I am so glad you brought these to me," she said, "because this will help me to remember my mother." So I guess my point is, this may be the last time, seeing the mothers, But anyway, I get upset when I'm sorry.
Dawn came to me a couple weeks ago when she decided to do this program and asked me if I would speak today. And I said I would, and I knew that I would be speaking in front of a lot of people that I work with. And she said, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And I said, nope, I'm going to do it. I have a son who was incarcerated. He was incarcerated for 2.5 years because of possession of drugs. And I have grandchildren, my son's children. And just from a personal point of view, I know how important it was for them to see their dad. The anxieties they go through. I'm looking at this picture while I was sitting here, and the picture of the dad behind the bars, but particularly this picture, because my son was incarcerated. He's out now, by the way, but my son was incarcerated the month of September. They have to go through their 90-day detox program, getting everything together before you can see your family stuff. And during that time, his oldest child, my grandson, who is 8 now, they had their gift for their class gift for their parent for that Christmas to put under the tree was a Christmas card. It wasn't just a little folded, it was a pretty cool Christmas card, and he elected to send his to his daddy. So we mailed that for him, and when I looked at it, it was pretty much this picture right here. My daddy's in jail. And it was, a little stick person behind some bars, because that's what he thought in his mind, that daddy was just a stick person behind these bars. And so He couldn't have a phone call either for 90 days. So when that first phone call came, it happened to be at our house. And this was a conversation I heard. The phone rings, you know, it's a collect call. You have to accept that collect call. It's my son. I talked to him for just a minute. He tells me he got the Christmas card, how much it hurt, you know. And, you know, I said, we'll get through this. So he said, you know, I hate for the kids to think that that's what I'm doing. I'm just behind these bars. And I said, you know, when they're able to visit, they're going to see the difference. My grandson gets on the phone, and the first words out of his mouth were, Are you eating in there, Dad? Have you had any food? Are they feeding you anything? You know, and I'm sure my son tells him what he's eating. He goes, well, where do you go to the bathroom at? Well, where do you sleep at? Well, do you have any friends in there? Well, do you get to talk during the day? Well, how do you take a bath? I mean, that is not what I was expecting. But for 90 days, this kid had been, you know, what is my dad doing? What is my dad doing? Fortunately for my son, he was a good inmate, and he got a job. He was able to drive a forklift while he was incarcerated, so he could talk to, you know, his son about that. And he didn't realize that Dad could work while he was in there, and he didn't realize that Dad could go to the library and read books. And there were just a lot of things that he didn't realize. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, how important it was for his kids to see him. And me too, because, you know, even though we work this program with people, you know, our people that we work the program with, if, you know, they're not incarcerated, they're just in a supervised setting. One of the things that I was really happy about when I visited him, and for the kids too, there was an area where they could play. Of course, you're still incarcerated. You know, one of the other things that was kind of funny, I mean, it was sad that he was incarcerated, but I remember the very first time my grandson saw him, because it is pretty much Hollywood how they judge incarceration. And he looked at my son and he said, wow, Dad, I don't know, I thought you would have on striped stuff. You know, I mean, things you don't think of that these kids are thinking. But they hugged him, and, you know, and it hurt to say goodbye. And, you know, the thing people need to remember too is, yep, it's in a prison, but it's a pretty safe place. I'm not going to tell you that there can't ever be an incident. Even in our supervised visitation program, we have a deputy. They wand them before they come in. Does that mean that there will never be an incident? Absolutely not. I mean, you know, we can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. But they're able to see that parent. Through our supervised program as well, we have dads that we get letters from that say, hey, I have a court order for child visitation. What can you do? There's nothing in place for anything like that right now. You know, I hope that one day there is, you know, but if the custodial parent, the caregiver, whoever doesn't want them to see that parent, they don't. Which brings me to my next point of the stigma that's on inmates. Just like my son, he had a drug problem. And so there have been times where I've heard people say, how can you know, because he was, when he was not incarcerated, and he is, again, the primary parent. He did the bathing, the dinner, the reading the books before they went to bed. But he had a drug problem. But it's no different than a dad, an alcoholic dad sitting at the dinner table every night who just hasn't been caught yet and incarcerated. And people say, I talk out of both sides of my mouth when I say he loves his children. Well, how can he go to prison because of drugs and you tell me he loves his children? Well, how can a man be addicted to pornography and say he loves his wife? I don't know, but I just know he really loves his kids, and they really love their dad. You know, I don't know what we can do about the circumstances of when children aren't allowed to see their parents. Absolutely, I think that it needs to be where parents have proven that you know, that they've went through the steps to see their, you know. But I think, and like I said, the GALs are already gone, but this goes a lot deeper than what we've discussed here today. Because there are children that deserve to see their parents, and, you know, and if they're not in there for a child offense, you know, I know with my grandchildren, my grandson, until he saw his dad, It took 3 months to get in there. He's a good student, you know, he's A student, but it was really hard on him. He couldn't concentrate. His teacher told me how much different it was as soon as he saw his dad. You know, after he saw his dad, he knew what to ask him. They had chess tournaments there all the time. That was something they could talk about. Hey, Dad, how much stuff did you lift on the forklift today? And there again, my son was very fortunate that he could do something like that, because sometimes inmates aren't involved in a work program. But anyway, that's my thoughts today. That for the people in our program who, they have a court order to see their kids, we can't enforce that when they're in prison if mom does. And, and the means to do that by virtual visitation,
Video conference.
Yeah. There are so many resources out there that we haven't tapped into that hopefully we can one day. And not to pat the inmate on the back, but for those children.